Today's story by Shlocha Pratis. Not so shocked anymore. I don't know if I told you the story, but if I did, it was only a part of it, and this is like the whole story. And for those of you, I don't think anybody in this room were around. No, you definitely were not. So back in the day, in the early MTC days, we were still in the Gary Square, and the rabbi was younger, and you were children. So this goes back a long time ago. The Sukkot Fabrengens, you heard about them. There was every night. It was all very new, and every night was long. First of all, biyurim of each of the Rabbeim and the corresponding to all of the Ushpizin and stories. A lot of preparation went into it. Nigunim were taught. They were very foundational Fabrengens that many of the Chevra became. And one of the stories that was told then, in those days, Sholem Duchman used to come and his family for Sukkot and used to participate in the Fabrengens, and he was often led the Fabrengen, at least together. And he told the story I'm telling you now, and that story became the story of a whole Sukkot Simchas Torah. There's a line in the story which I'll share with you, so much so that one of my children, who was just in teen years, and the teen years are really starting to like open up and see the world. So she would sit every night on the other side, or back of the sukkah on the other side, listening to the Fabrengens. And this Fabrengen is what got her. She became a chassid that night. So much so, a funny thing, that CBC decided to do a story, we have it on tape, on how Jews celebrate Sukkot. Some of that got to me. I don't know how this happened. And so they came and they saw, we made a little Fabrenge of the kids in the sukkah, and they interviewed my daughter, this is a teenager, what's special about this holiday? And what she shared was about the Fabrengens. She may even share this story, I don't think so, but so I'm going to tell you the punchline of the story, and you'll probably pick it up yourself. Yeah, here's the story. Which Sholem shared with us, Sholem Duchman. So here, Rabbi Yoel is talking. Where I get it from, because they're now publishing the Kvar Chabad stories about Yoel, stories that Yoel said. So Yoel is talking. My father, he says, Afol Khan had a friend, a close friend, with whom they learned together in Lubavitch. Over time, he got distant from Yiddishkeit. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry, next story. There was a Yid, his name was Yitzchak Itkin, who learned in Lubavitch for a year and a half. Now, this is the detail of the story. He didn't learn in the Zal, but in the Shiurim. And he says, once upon a time, there wasn't the idea of Shir Aleph and Shir Beis in Lubavitch. All of the classes before the Zal, where you just learned on your own, were called Shiurim. For whatever reasons, at one point, he left the Shiurim, and then over time, became completely distant from Torah and mitzvahs. In 1929, he left Russia and moved to Israel, that was in Palestine then, and settled in Tel Aviv. He doesn't mention it here, but if I recall, he worked in the post office. When the Frierdiker Rebbe came to Yisrael, the famous visit in 1929, so this Yitzchak Itkin, went through a whole inner turmoil. On the one hand, he wanted a strong desire to Lubavitch and to see the Frierdiker Rebbe. On the other hand, he was ashamed. He was embarrassed, and perhaps more importantly, he was afraid that it's going to upset his whole life. It's going to see the Frierdiker Rebbe, and it's going to stir the guilt, and he was torn. So every day on the way to work, he would pass by the hotel where the Frierdiker Rebbe was staying. As I remember in the story. And in order to force himself If he's not going to go and see the Rebbe, he wore short pants, which was very common, the khaki short pants. He's wearing short pants. He's not going to have the audacity to go and see the Frierdiker Rebbe. So this was his one day during this stay, he's walking by where the Rebbe is staying, and he sees the Chassidim milling around, and he can't. He has to go in. So he runs home, and he changes his pants, and he comes into the Rebbe. And here's the line of the Rebbe said to him, which became the word of the whole year Sukkot Simchas Torah here in MTC. Rebbe said to him when he walked into him, Rabbi Yitzchak, mit Reitzach, zum Sof treffen sich. In Yiddish, mit Reitzach, how do you translate mit Reitzach? We wander about, but in the end, we meet. Then he said to him, was herzach Rabbi Yitzchak? Lernst du Perek Tanya? You learn a Perek Tanya? So learn a Perek Tanya, learn a Perek Tanya. And the whole Yechidus, the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about this and did mention a word about that he's not Shemesh Shabbos and he's descended where he is, and just Gabriel continues, and he says, years later, this is already after the establishment of Kfar Chabad and after the war, so they made a big kindos in Tel Aviv for Yutis Kistev. Rabbi was telling us what kind of fellow he was. So they rented a big hall and they invited, as there were once, and they invited community leaders and orators and speakers, which goes until today. So he was also amongst the assembled. He didn't like it. He says, I'm looking for a Fabrengen, and he has speeches. So after the kinos that night, they said, the Rebbe said to him, so come to the yeshiva in Tel Aviv to Fabrengen. So he said he was masking, he agreed. He came to the Fabrengen and he took a lot of mashke, and he cried for a long time. And then he turned to the kids. He doesn't say what year exactly, just didn't see what year, but anyway, he turns to the Bochim, the kids, he sees the Yelod and the children. And he says, Kinderlach, I was in many situations in my life, but a year and a half in the Lubavitch will never ever leave me. And then he said, these are final words. He was just deep into the Fabrengen. He said, I will not die without doing tshuva. But not like a misnagid that's tshuva. The misnagid that's tshuva doesn't think about the Eibishter. He thinks about himself. I mean true tshuva. Have a wonderful day.
Shkoyach.
Chaim Gedenkst, do you remember those days? Dreitzach and some soft trefmesich. You remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was what year was it? It was the early 80s. Not the early, the late 80s, the mid late 80s. Yeah. No. Early 90s, I mean, early 90s. Yeah, okay.